$1 trillion. That's the amount of money that is estimated are losses globally to scams every year. Digital scams, phone scams, email scams, all sorts of ways people, bad actors with resources and skills and technology are going after not even the most vulnerable of us, all of us. Today's expert that we're talking to spends a lot of time working with people, educating them around digital scams. What's out there? What are some red flags? And what are some ways we can think about helping protect us all? By the way, especially those of us who are kind of caretakers to some aging seniors, as we know that what's happening only gets worse from here. I know it's a heavy one. Stick with me on this. I promise you there's some learnings and you're going to enjoy the conversation, even if it feels heavy. I'm your host, Kathy Vines. Welcome to Surfing the Quicksand. Have you been hearing me talk about the Clever Girl Organizing Challenge and wondering if 2026 is your year to join? Well, now's your chance to find out. Registration is now open through January 4th, 2026. We spend 11 weeks together, and I give you an assignment every week. We're going to work on all the spaces and categories in your home that are kind of causing some chaos. Your kitchen, paperwork, clothes, kids' toys, all the different spaces that really can get out of control, whether it's around clutter or your systems, and you just feel overwhelmed and don't know where to start. You're going to start with me. You'll be part of an 11-week program with weekly assignments, an exclusive supportive Facebook group community where I give you much more content on helping us understand and getting to the bottom of what you own, why you own it, and where you keep the keepers. I'm all about helping you understand the psychological and emotional barriers that have been getting in your way and helping you figure out ways to tackle that. Head over to clevergirlorganizing.com for you to find out more about the 2026 Clever Girl Organizing Challenge and sign up by January 4th. See you there. Since I first launched this podcast and I was talking to people about that unique role of the adult caregiver to their parents, I'd been thinking about some of the most important things that I'm hearing about from people, what's on their mind, what really has them weighed down. And honestly, there's a million answers to that question. But one that comes up a lot is some fear, some very real fear about the very big reality of keeping parents safe from digital scams. Right? Whether this is computer hacking or someone taking over bank accounts or parents getting duped into falling for bad actors, digital scams are on the rise, and the people who are perpetrating them are excellent at them. Takes all of us to build up our skills and our knowledge and our ability and our communication with each other to make sure that we can continue to protect ourselves, protect our parents, protect our assets, protect our dignity. And so I knew for sure I wanted to bring somebody on to talk about just that. Today's guest is one of my NAPO froligs. You've heard me use that word before, friend plus colleague from the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals. Kate Huffnagel is the owner of the Digital Wrangler, and she, unlike some organizers you may have met, doesn't really deal with physical stuff. She's on the digital side. She deals with passwords and data and digital legacy, which I'm sure is a term that we're going to define a little bit later on. But she came out of a tech exec career and took her passion for technology and, quite frankly, her exposure to what makes people vulnerable when it comes to technology and cybersecurity, and her passion for education and her passion for organizing to bring them all together to work with individuals and families and small businesses to help them plan for their future with their digital protection in mind. And she is going to go deep dive with us today on digital scams. Thank you so much for being here, Kate.
Oh, Kathy, thank you so much for the invitation. You and I have known each other for a little while now, so it's just great to kind of get together more in a professional setting and have a chat about this really important topic.
And I know that you and I have talked about this a number of times, and long before this came out, right? That's became a specialty for you, right? You've been in this space for a long time. And so I know you've been watching this and working with clients for a long time. I want to start with that, right? What have you been seeing over the last few years in this world of digital scams, phone scams, these ways that people are going after and preying after people, especially the elderly, but quite frankly, everyone? What are you seeing these days?
Yeah, and I think that's a really great place to start, Kathy, is that everyone is being impacted. There's been some research that's come out that says 73% of US adults, regardless of their age, have experienced at least one online scam or attack. That's a huge number. And these scams today, unlike scams of 5 or 10 years ago, they aren't about bad spelling anymore. They're really going after emotion, trust, and quite frankly, the timing. Right? We are all juggling so much in our lives today, and the scammers are counting on us being distracted.
So interesting. I hadn't really thought about that factor, right? Which is, yes, they're getting much better, right? You're absolutely right. We used to be able to look at an email and say, that's not how you spell that word. This didn't come out of that very official company's email or the communications organization. Or you'd be able to just kind of check like, ah, that's a funky looking icon. We got pretty good at it. Then we learned how to maybe hover over links to say, I know it says click here to contact us, but what is that address really? So people have gotten a little bit more sophisticated around that. What I'm talking about here is really just the content. What are they putting out? Talk about the timing and distraction. How is that a factor?
Well, we're distracted in general, right? We're juggling whatever balls that we are juggling on any given day. And so these bad actors are counting on us not to pay attention to those details. So we might get a pop-up on our computer that, indicates that they're, from Microsoft or Apple. And those of us, Kathy, like in our generation, we're going to be like, yeah, I don't think so. But the older generation, because these pop-ups are using, vivid colors and in our face, this older generation is going to be like, oh my gosh, something's wrong with my computer. Um, or now, what we're starting to see is with the very rapid advancement of artificial intelligence, right? Voices are now being able to be cloned. So a grandparent might get a phone call from someone who is indicating that they are an adult child or even a grandkid that says, hey, grandma, I'm in trouble and you need to send money. So this is just a whole new dimension of scams that we have to learn about and be educated about so that we don't fall victim and fall into these traps.
The grandparent scam, I literally just heard about someone receiving a phone call recently with that wasn't even really about I'm in trouble, but it was just about trying to establish credibility like, hey, grandma, it's me, right? They hadn't even gotten to an I'm in trouble part. So we can, same thing, get a little train like, oh, if your grandchild in air quotes calls and says, Grandma, I'm in trouble, right? That's like, oh, okay, that's a heightened sensitivity from the beginning, but maybe I already know, oh, I've heard that that's a scam. But if they're starting in different ways and they're starting to try and build trust and build rapport and keep you on the phone longer, quite frankly, that becomes a more effective process here. When I think about, right, we used to talk about, um, you mentioned the pop-ups, right? And it used to be really easy to say, oh my gosh, I clicked on something, right? Or I got an email, I clicked on the wrong thing. But I even get the impression that even that's more sophisticated than it used to be. And it isn't so much that I can point to an action that might have brought something into my computer. Do you have any sense on that?
Yeah, I would agree with you, right? You can even just click on a link that takes you to a website that looks like a storefront. Oh, look at these cute t-shirts. But under the hood, so to speak, is a lot of malicious code that then we have no idea, what is happening behind the scenes with our computer. So utilizing trusted websites also becomes important. And so whether we're talking about websites or answering phone calls from numbers that we don't know about, there's a third thing that we also need to be weary of, and it doesn't really have the greatest of names, but the FBI calls it pig butchering. Seniors in particular, thanks to the pandemic, have been isolated and are looking for connection. And so if older individuals are on Facebook and they get a direct private message. Oh, that picture you posted yesterday looks like you had a great time. Well, over time, right? And of course, the senior is going to say, oh, wow, thank you so much. And that bot on the other end, maybe it's a human, but I believe it's more of a bot, over months is going to build a relationship with that individual and build trust. And at some point, months down the road, may ask, oh, Kathy, you know, my husband's furloughed, and I would really love to just treat us to, Dunkin' Donuts today. Can you send me $15? Right? And it seems, oh, 15 bucks, sure, I can do that. How do you want me to send it? Oh, here's my Venmo. Right? Well, over time, that relationship is going to continue to be nurtured, and at some point, they're going to be asking for a lot more, like six figures worth of money. And by that point, the individual now has a relationship with the other end or whoever's on the other end. And they are going to feel like, yes, I must help them. I have plenty of money and I am going to help them. And I have my own agency and I am making that decision. So even, Kathy, the smart, savvy women like us have the potential to get duped. And it's not because you and I are careless, it's just because the scammers are getting that good. Whether they're getting that good at tech or that good at building a relationship with us or that good at utilizing new technology, it's just something that now we all need to start paying attention to a little bit more closely.
So I completely agree with you that pig butchering is a terrible, terrible name for it. And yet I completely can appreciate what they're trying to demonstrate, right? Like it's you're catching a pig in a corner who's isolated. And um, when you talk about seniors who are isolated, even just not just through the pandemic, but in general, often seniors
Yes.
can become isolated and feel disconnected. Um, so the fact that through technology, through a device, through a phone, they are getting connected with people and with people that they say, "Oh, aren't they so nice? They checked on me today," right? It
Yes.
can feel very genuine. And I know one of the big avenues of this that are they're kind of called romance scams, right? Where women or men, both, are being preyed upon by whomever might be quote again, air quotes, pursuing them romantically
Mhm.
with the goal of currying a financial transaction, right?
Right.
Gee, I would love to come visit you and finally meet you in person. Can you forward me money for the bus, for the plane?
Mhm.
I live in a different country. Can you help me? Right. So when I hear about these stories, which are these kind of these romance predatory stories, and honestly, think about it, we're not hearing about it from those people. We're hearing about it from their loved ones who are very concerned, who are saying, I had to take mom's phone away from her. I had to disconnect their Facebook account because this person now has so many different ways to get in touch with them. Because, of course, she said, oh, of course you can text me. Oh, of course you can have this contact information too. And they're ingrained upon it. When I think about the panic and the fear that comes into, again, adult children's or loved ones about this, I'm assuming that's something you're hearing it from that population as well. Can we let's talk a little bit about how you've been hearing about the the fear, the impact. of scams?
Well, I get a lot of DMs, and I'm thinking back to a woman who has now become a friend of mine. She probably reached out a year and a half ago on my Instagram account and just saying, "Hey, this is happening to the parent of my best friend. What tips do you have?" Um, so I'm hearing it from folks our generation, Kathy, and I'm also hearing it from seniors. I go into independent living communities twice a month and give pro bono tech talks. And my last tech talk was just 2 Fridays ago. And the seniors we had to move to a different room at the last minute, and we actually wound up kind of having a well, we were sitting in very nice couches and wingback chairs but in front of the fireplace. So we had a fireside chat about digital security, and hearing directly from these seniors about how some of their loved ones are involved in kind of having that ongoing conversation. Some of them don't have a lot of loved ones. And it was, from my perspective, really kind of awesome to see a older individual say, you know what, I'm kind of, you know, on my own. I don't really have anyone. And just the sense of community that I witnessed of, the person sitting next to them, leaning over, maybe touching their arm, and then the two of them talking afterwards as I was packing up. So I find it comforting that there are older individuals out there who are willing to lean into these conversations. And at the same time, I'm comforted in seeing that, the caregivers, the adult kids in their 40s, 50s, even 60s are also leaning into this topic. Okay, how do I get educated so that I can then potentially help those that I care about?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll share a personal experience that we went through kind of an early pandemic with my parents, and this was a situation where their email got hijacked, right? So
Mhm.
then that happens, and we still have no idea how it happened. There was no clue on our end what might have gotten that. But what happened was their email was hijacked, and they have one of the big ISPs, and that's a email provider, and they got into that list that's on everybody's internet provider, right? If you're Comcast or Verizon or Gmail, like everyone you've ever emailed is kind of like listed there, even if it's not in your sent file or not in your contacts. And there was a blast email sent out to all of those, basically saying, "Hey, we're looking to we need some help getting some gift cards for our nieces for Christmas." Right? This was in December. Can you help? And we had people who would write back, right, saying, "Gee, gosh, doesn't sound like you," except their email had been hijacked, so they weren't getting their responses. They were being forwarded to another email address that was already being added in on the account level. So my parents weren't getting notified that anything was going on. The mystery of it all, it didn't even last more than an hour before a relative picked up the phone and said, "Hey, I didn't think you kind of had that kind of relationship with your nieces at this stage. Is this what's going on?" And sure, so we were able to, again, very quickly, it was probably within an hour of it happening, understand what happened. I was able to get into the account on the website. I was able to see the forwarded email address, turn that off, change, knock down all the passwords, do all the things. But we do know that other people got contacted. We know of nobody who actually committed the, "Yes, of course, I'll help you with gift cards." But, what they do there is they're counting on, like, "Oh, well, this person is a nice person and they're a friend and they're a friend in need. So, of course, I'm going to try and help them." And
Yep.
just that step that you take of, "Let me just check with them and make sure," even that was being thwarted and kind of hijacked around there. So we were able to, again, within a couple of hours, we got everything back to where it needed to be, alerted everybody, "This was a
Mhm.
scam. I hope you didn't fall for it. We are so sorry." I don't know, even know why you would apologize, right? There's so many, we're absolutely victims here. But this became that kind of sense of like, oh, I knew lots of parts about, but the idea that that an email address forwarding could be put in there to
Yeah.
say, oh, none of the replies are going to come back to you. That was new to me, right? It's like, oh, now I know when I talk to somebody else and they say, oh yeah, I think my email got hijacked, not just spoofed, which is when it kind of shows up in your account, but it's not really that person and you can tell, but really emails coming from them, saying, you need to go in and see, is there a forwarded email that's been set up there? You need to undo that. I
Yeah.
similarly heard about a story about somebody who had had their kind of their Amazon account taken over, and the people went in and changed that email address so they weren't getting
Mhm.
confirmations, and they were putting purchases into archived status, so you wouldn't even see them in your recent purchases. These are people doing this. Like that's not bots doing that kind of stuff. That's somebody who's going in a very timed way, saying, first we do this, then we do this, then we do this, and we lock it all down.
Well, and speaking of Amazon, so a good friend of mine's sister, I guess probably about a year ago, her Amazon account was hacked, and her sister, rather than having a credit card stored in her Amazon account, had a PayPal account stored. And PayPal has different fraud protections than credit cards. And the bottom line is that she lost $3,700 because she chose to have her PayPal account linked to her Amazon account rather than a credit card, credit card companies tend to be a little bit more forgiving. Yes, they have a process of reporting a fraud account and then a process for investigating. But I mean, just from that perspective alone, Kathy, thinking about what accounts or what payment information you have stored in different websites, that in itself could take a few hours just to kind of review, okay, what do I have? You know what? I'm actually going to take a very conservative approach and I'm going to delete all my saved credit cards. Yes, it makes things a little bit more inconvenient when you go to purchase something, but if you like to purchase things often, that time to go get your credit card, you may be like, you know what, I don't really need it. It's not worth the effort to go dig out my credit card. Um, and what I loved about your story, Kathy, about your parents' email being hijacked, and yes, like when you first used that word, I was like, oh, I'm kind of curious to hear about this story. But you're absolutely right. That account was hijacked, settings were changed. But the positive thing that I love there is that there was family teamwork to come in and figure out, the next steps. And to me, that is a really important theme when it comes to digital scams, online scams, is it really needs to be a team approach. Because with a team approach, if we have open conversations, then that creates that safe space for someone in the family to say, hey, I got this. Do you think this is real? Right? Or even another step, you know what? I was distracted. I may have gotten duped. What do you all think? And then whoop, you've got that family team in place to tackle it.
And that I may have gotten duped point and being able to say, hey, I need to raise my hand. Boy, there's a lot that happens there, right? Because first there's first it's just panic,
Yes.
shame,
Yes.
fear, right? And shame can, listen, shame is such a big part of all of our lives in some ways, and it's so, so heavy. But the idea that you might have to admit to somebody, I got
Mm,
duped and I'm paying the price for it and I need help. And yes, I know we talked about this before, and I'm sorry that I wasn't,
mhm.
all the ways that they can blame themselves around it.
Right.
Again,
Right.
I do think there's an amount of personal accountability and responsibility, both in the preparation and the reaction that can happen when somebody falls into this situation. And we can talk about that. But the idea is still there are people whose empires, trillions of dollars, are in this industry of deceiving people with fraud and theft. And so even the brightest people, even the people who are most connected
Yep.
can feel at risk here. So for just the normal person to have to come up with that shame to say, hey, I have to call my son, I have to call my daughter, I have to call my bank and say, I think I might have done something. It's
Yeah,
terrifying.
it is terrifying, Kathy. And I'm actually thinking back to the days when I worked in big tech and, depending on let's just say depending on my perception or my definition of success. At the peak of my career, I had over 100 people working for me. But when I was leading smaller teams, it was really important for me to instill this mantra of, we fail forward, meaning we own our mistakes and we operated on a cadence, which in the tech world they called them sprints, but in essence we were working anywhere on a 2 to 4 week cadence. And at the end of each cycle, we would all come together and we would review, okay, what went well, what didn't go so hot. And we had, oftentimes it was one of the ugliest stuffed animals that you would ever see in your life. However, the person on the team who would say, I really screwed this up. I didn't read the instructions properly. I thought I was to code to do this, but I realize now it was for this, right? So that person might get rewarded by having then to hold on to that stuffed animal for the next cycle. But they had great honor at the end of the next cycle to pass it on to somebody else. And the goal there was to create a safe space for people to own up and say, yeah, I messed up.
Yeah.
Um, and it really was empowering because then we could have a conversation of, oh, you didn't read the instructions properly. Do we need to change the way that we write them? Right. And so coming from a world where I was leading and creating those environments, I appreciate this conversation because it also reminds me that that world is not everyone's world where we can raise our hand and say, yeah, I screwed up and I'm going to own it. Um, but I think it's really important that we show people grace, particularly when it comes to scams, because knowing that over 70% of us are falling victim, there's no shame in that.
I am thinking about a client I worked with, an older woman who, again, kind of lived on her own. She had an aide who came in and helped, and she really had no family. And I worked with her for quite some time. And on a regular basis, what we were doing was setting up her new phone or her new bank account because she had to tell the bank that her credit card was stolen again and hacked. And it was one of those things where I'm like, well, I'm glad she at least has the ability to call the bank and say, I think there's a problem and I think that something's wrong. And I recognize there's a point in time where lots of people may not have that ability to see what's going on or the ability to raise their hand, whether that's to the bank or the police or the family.
Mhm.
Um, I I think about I think about that notion of the kind of the team and the safe space. And one of the things that I'm struck by as a woman in her 50s is I am a member of AARP and I get the AARP magazine. And in almost every magazine or newspaper or an email, they're talking about digital security, digital safety, and digital scams. And I think it's kind of helpful for me where I could maybe have a conversation with my other over 50 AARP member families be like, "Hey, do you get the AARP magazine? Did you read that article?" Right? So even having that safe space to have an open conversation about things that is not a real situation, but let's talk about it, right? Did you read the article? What came
Right.
up for you? What has happened for you? Do you know any stories from friends or family? Just again to kind of have that as a communication, open communication
Yes.
dialogue in the family.
Yeah, lead with that curiosity, create a collaborative environment, just asking those questions, right? Have you heard about those new Medicare scams? Did you see this in the AARP magazine? And I don't know if you saw me, Kathy, but I became a card carrying member of AARP last year when I turned 50. And yes, I got the trunk organizer that I see the commercials for all the time. Um, but you're right. Like those magazines and the emails that I get, there's always something in there, a little gold nugget about a scam. And pay attention. And if
Yeah.
you don't feel comfortable having, asking questions with friends, whether you're getting together over margaritas or you're having brunch, right? Just at least then look for those little nuggets in coming from AARP just so that you're a little bit more informed.
I want to talk about a very specific kind of or angle of scam right now because it's on my mind because I'm in Massachusetts and my state representative is sponsoring a bill to address it, at least in Massachusetts, which is kind of the crypto scams. So this is a situation in which somebody is being contacted through their computer, through their phone, however, and they are implored to go get cash from the bank or under your mattress, wherever you have cash, and carry the cash to a crypto ATM machine, deposit the cash, and then that becomes someone else's cryptocurrency account. We had an issue. There was a in August here in a town not far from me, an off-duty police officer was kind of out and about and saw an older man with a briefcase walking up to one of these crypto ATM machines. And they just look like they're in many cases they're like a coin store machine or something
Yep.
in a store or in a convenience shop. Like it's not like they're in a back alley, they're out and about. But this off-duty police officer saw this older man walking up to one of those machines with a briefcase, and it like got his spidey senses enough to go address it with him and say, "Sir, can you tell me what's going on?" And essentially he was able to effectively interrupt I think it was going to be $12,000 deposit that this person was going to do. And so my state representative, a woman named Kate Lipper-Garabedian here in Massachusetts, is co-sponsoring a bill that would force these machines to be registered with the state, that they would have to have cameras, that there would be daily limits on transaction in terms of the amounts that one could deposit, or I assume withdraw, but certainly it's the deposit that's a problem, that there be signage posting about scams around it. And like just with the goal of people not realizing this has become huge. And it, unlike your credit card, who might have a recourse, once it's in crypto, it's probably gone.
Yeah, it's likely gone, and there's a lot that I want to say and unpack there. First, kudos to your local representative. I mean, if we're going to transfer money from one financial institution to another, there's limits that are put in place. To me, it makes sense that there should be limits on these crypto ATMs. And Kathy, you gave me such a lovely intro about working in tech before I started my business, the Digital Wrangler. But one of the things that I did when I worked in my high tech career was I worked for the Central Intelligence Agency. So I have a lot of friends um, who either still work there or used to work there, not to mention a number of mentors who have retired since I have left. And I got a text message from one of my former mentors who now retired to Florida just a few months ago. She and her husband both worked at the agency. The husband was almost duped. He got a phone call, put that in air quotes, from the local sheriff. And he was on the phone for 2 hours because he wound up driving around town getting as much cash out as he could until finally his wife was like, "How come you're not home? You've been gone for a long time." And he's like, I can't talk to you right now. I got to get this money to the bank." And she starts yelling at him, "Get off the phone. Like it is a scam." But he was on his way to a crypto ATM, and thankfully, like she was like, My husband's been gone. Like this errand should have taken you 10 minutes. You've been gone 2 hours." And she like inserted herself. So when I mention that everyone is falling victim to these scams. I mean it. Even people who you would think on paper would know better because
Yeah.
these scammers are becoming very sophisticated.
One of the things I have heard as I've read or seen stories is even the term hypnotize, right? The idea that if they get you physically on the phone, they can use language and tone and
Yes.
maybe even like subtle noises in the back that kind of take over your brain. Right. So
Mhm.
now we're at the situation where it's like, gee, on paper, this person never should have fallen for this. And yet there's
Right.
such emotional manipulation and psychological manipulation power that people will swear, they'll say, I swear I thought it was real. There was no doubt in my mind.
Mhm.
My grandson was being impacted. My files were being hijacked, and I couldn't. I was going to get access to all of
Right.
my accounts and my money. The concept that these people, very well educated, aware people, are being sucked into this hypnosis
Yes.
is really where I think that conversation with families needs to happen to say, listen, mom, dad, I know you're smart. I know you read the AARP articles like I do. But oh my gosh, what they're doing now, they can kind of take over your brain, and we need to have some
Yes.
trusted language with each
That's
other
right.
that's going to say, wait, is this really my grandson? Or wait, I need to tell somebody else. If somebody is telling me I can't tell anybody, if somebody is telling me they're the police, they are trying to make sure they are isolating me like the pig. They are trying to
That's right.
get me away from anyone else who can interrupt this spell and
Mhm.
interrupt the flow of money.
That's absolutely right. So a couple months ago, I went to a presentation from my local sheriff's office, and they shared that, if you get a call from quote unquote the sheriff, hang up, obviously. But these scammers are becoming so good that they're actually using legitimate names of police officers and sheriffs so that when you say, okay, you know what, I'm going to hang up, I'm going to call the sheriff's department or the police department, and I'm going to find out, does officer, uh, you know, Bill Smith work there? They're likely going to say, oh, yeah, but he's not on duty right now. And that to me is even scarier, where you can get the verification that that officer's name is a legit officer. But then you need to be smarter to ask more questions. Okay, well, is that officer on duty? Because an officer isn't going to call you when they're off duty. And what department is that officer assigned to? Oh, well, they do road safety. Okay, well, then why are they calling me about an online scam? Right. And so it's really, really, it's kind of horrifying. I mean, I'm just gonna say it, but that's where the education and that pause, where we need to have that wherewithal to hang up the phone, delete the text message, not open the email. Just because someone sends us an email doesn't mean we have to open every single one, right? We need to give ourselves permission to delete and not even respond. I mean, another scam, you might get a very innocuous looking text message that may say, like I'm thinking of the one I got a couple of weeks ago, doesn't address me by name, but it just says, hey, don't pay attention to Jason. He's really stressed out about money right now. Okay. Back in the day when we first got cell phones, we might be polite and respond back, say, sorry, wrong number. Okay, we do not want to do that anymore, because then we're saying to that whoever's on the other end that this is a live and active phone number. So you get a weird random text like that, you need to be deleting it. You even may want to consider marking it as junk and or going into your phone and blocking that number. But at a minimum, don't respond because they're going to then turn into, oh, well, how's your day going? right? And before you know it,
Yeah.
so they're popping up and looking, and there are just so many different forms of them. It's difficult to keep up.
I'm so glad you mentioned this because this is one, I get 3 to 5 of these a week, right? And it's anything from, hey, are we still on for lunch on Tuesday? Or, gosh, just something that makes it sound like we're friends, right?
Mhm.
And you're right, right? When back in the day, we might be polite and say, sorry, wrong number, because gosh, they really trying to make friends to go play golf with somebody. And
Mhm.
it's so sad that they didn't get the right person, right? So we would do that. And I remember one of the first times I got one of these a few years ago, and I responded, it was something like, hey, are we still on for coffee next Tuesday? And I was like, oh gosh, who did I make plans with? Shoot. And I said, sorry, I don't know who this number is. And it was like, it was Jane. Didn't you, we met at the conference. Didn't you put my phone number in your phone? Right. And what's that? That's guilt, right? They're going to try and guilt me
Right.
into liking them or doing whatever they want because I feel bad. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe
Yes.
I forgot this
Yes.
person. Oh, shoot. Well, I don't know who it is, but now I feel bad because clearly we had a moment. So now I should extend something to them. So I realized I was like, oh, that's this manipulation that's going on there is
That's
that
right.
guilt. And you're right. It's like building a connection. And then you'll get or you say, oh, wrong number. And like, oh my gosh, you were so nice to tell me. Oh, aren't you so nice? So what's going on with your day? Right. They think that you're a
Yes.
nice person. So like, maybe you're just going to be a texting friend that the universe gave you to me. Let's be friends. It's
Yep.
not that. It's very, very targeted. And that is where probably is the bots and they're sending out 1,000 messages a minute and hoping that two write back because two is a payday.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
I want to talk about protecting ourselves, right? Because we've spent the last period of time talking about a lot of the drama, and it's all real, and it's important that we talk about it so people are get it a little bit more tangible. But I want to shift and talk about some of the ways that we can protect ourselves, or that we can help our parents protect themselves.
Well, there's a lot of things that you can do. First and foremost is stop and pause, right? Again, as I said earlier, these bad actors are counting on us to be distracted. So if we're living intentionally and with purpose, that means we're slowing down and we're examining things. Does this make sense? No, I'm going to delete it. But there's also, let's say you don't have that ability because it's really hard for people in this day and age where we're getting hit and pulled and pushed in all different directions. Um, that sense of urgency. If someone or something is forcing you to take action now because something else might happen, that is a huge red flag, right? But in terms of how do we put in potentially layers of protection, we can start with things like freezing our credit. We could lock our social security numbers, right? Some view that as an extreme measure. I personally have done it. With our banks, we can ask our banks, okay, can we set up alerts? So this is where a team potentially comes into play. So if you have a trusted contact on a bank or a investment account, um, you can work with the bank to say, okay, you know what? I would really love for Kathy to be added to my account as a trusted contact. And yes, bank, I am authorizing you to notify Kathy, in addition to myself, if any suspicious activity is identified. Like, I love my day to day bank. What I don't love, and I say that sarcastically, is when my husband and I are out for dinner on a Saturday night and we promise that we're not going to be on our phones, but then I get a text message and no one ever texts me on a Saturday night. And I'm like, hey, honey, that's kind of weird. Can I take a look at it? And he says, sure. And I'm like, oh, it's my bank asking me if I'm spending $800 at so and so's store. I'm like, I'm just going to tell them it's not me. So I text back the letter N, no. But if I am starting not to trust banks, or if my husband is worried that I am starting to fall victim, then I'm going to add him. Kathy, I'm going to add you to my account so that you are also getting notified about suspicious activity. You can also work with your bank to just set up alerts. Oh, look at that. Kathy, you got a notification that I added a new payee to my checking account. You may then ask me later, hey, Kate, what was that all about? Oh, yeah, I got this random call from so and so. And you're going to be like, Kate, remember we've talked about this? Oh my God, Kathy, you're absolutely right, right? Like put that team in place. And then some other things, putting setting up two-factor authentication are really, really helpful. And I hear often from seniors and also my own family members that, oh gosh, it's such a pain in the neck. I got to go get my phone. I got to go get that code. Well, you know what? To me, anyway, that inconvenience is worth that additional layer of protection. But everyone's going to have a different threshold for that, Kathy.
I want to say something about the code is I get the sense that that's actually also being used as a trick. Or we get things from Coinbase. Here's your code. If you didn't ask for this code, please call us at this number. Right? So you think
Right?
somebody's trying to do something with your account. I don't have a Coinbase account, right? But like, oh, I should call this number because it said so because I didn't ask for that code. So even the people
Right.
who are kind of in tune to the value of two-factor
Hmm.
authentication can say like, oh, looks like I need to call. And they're like, oh gosh, no, I guess somebody's going after your account. Let's walk through that. My husband and I
Yeah.
joke all the time where he's like, oh, guess what? So and so bank said somebody's trying to access my account. We joke about how we don't have an account at
Have an
so and
account
so
there.
about, and you're like, oh, looks like somebody's trying to do something with my Easy Pass account from London, right? We joke
Right.
about it, but again, we one of the underlying things there is we tell each other about like what are you saying? What am I saying? I had somebody try to open up an account under my business name.
Ooh.
And that was a tough one. And the only reason it got clued into me is because they spelled my business name slightly wrong and my email address was slightly wrong. And I spent 4 hours on the phone with my bank to try and get this stopped. And eventually it did, but it took, it was 2 hours one weekend and then I got a new notification. It was 2 hours that next weekend. And eventually nothing came up, but I had to go through freezing. I'd already frozen my social security number. This is now my tax ID for my business. I wouldn't have thought about that, but I'm a solopreneur and I've got the one account and it's all me. And if I'm not protecting that, it wouldn't even have occurred to me. I think so much about my personal accounts and my personal wealth that I wasn't even thinking about my business.
Yeah, the business is like we could have a whole other
Yeah.
conversation about protecting our businesses.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say, since we're both, in NAPO, I am president of the NAPO virtual chapter right now. We have over 230 members. And Friday, I was working with some clients actually in town, which is a little rare for me. I usually work with people virtually. And so I'm in between going to from one client's home to another. I just happened to glance through my text mess or my emails, and I have a message from a NAPO virtual chapter board member. And it was just like, okay, just want to let you know, like I marked that email as spam. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I go work with this second client. I come back to my car a couple of hours later. There's another email from a different board member, and they forwarded an email that they got. And here was the thing. The email said it was from Kate Huffnagel, but the email address was not mine. It did not have my signature that I have at the bottom. And in fact, the email was signed regards Kate Huffnagel. Do I ever sign my full name when I write an email? No. So it was actually an opportunity for me to educate the whole entire board. Okay, let's have a quick refresher on staying safe online and what's a scam and what's not a scam. And here we had it was a wonderful case study. But everyone on the virtual chapter board, Kathy, is, probably our demographic, plus or minus maybe one, where we're all balancing caring for our parents. Maybe we have kids, we're volunteering, we're running a business. And here it was just like, wow, so 2 out of 7 of you thought to like tell me about this email because you were very concerned. Now, one took the great action. One was like, hey, take a look at this email. It doesn't quite it makes sense, but they weren't highlighting like the factor. So it's like, okay, we're going to use this as an opportunity for education. But
Yeah.
again, coming back and having that collaborative, open conversation. And Kathy, I love how you and your husband can joke with each other. So clearly, the two of you have created a safe space. But I'm not sure that everyone in the country has done that with their friends and family.
Yeah, I'm sure. And my husband works for a large financial services company where they do regular phishing tests.
Mhm.
Phishing, PHISH, for people who are not familiar with the term. That's when they are sending an email with the goal of getting you to click on something. And the company does this as tests on their employees to determine are they going to fall for it and therefore risk the company's whole cybersecurity platform. So like they really invest in that effort, and so it's but they're driving it, right? That company is saying we want to protect
Yes.
ourselves, we need to
Right.
protect our customers, we need to protect our assets, and it's every single person who has an email address is a point of vulnerability.
That's absolutely right. And I remember back in the day when I worked in the corporate world, I had read research that, the average person needs to be told a minimum of 7 times before they're actually going to start to listen and pay attention. So kudos to your husband's company for routinely putting information front and center to all of their employees. Right? Some may need to only hear it 2 or 3 times. Others may need to hear it 10 or 12, right? But it's that repetition
Yeah.
that's going to yield results.
I want to talk a little bit about under the guise of protecting yourself in this. And because one of the things I know that you're really deep on is passwords and password management. Can we talk a little bit about that? And I want to talk about kind of not only what people can do, what people should be mindful of, but how do you work with people when it comes to some of this stuff?
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity for bringing up passwords. Password management and password organizing services is one of the offerings that I do provide. And oftentimes I just start with, let's just have a conversation. I actually have a password consultation call scheduled this week, and I've sent them a number of questions. I'm like, I don't know if we're going to ask all of these questions, but I want to give you an idea of what we're going to talk about. So, how do you track your passwords today? Right? Do you have a little book? Do you have them all up in your brain? Do you have a couple on post-its that are stuck to the computer and you got a sheet of paper somewhere else and maybe you're using the Notes app on your phone? Um, Having them in all different locations, believe it or not, impacts our productivity and our efficiency because if we need a password and we can't get online to something, then we're going to lose time because maybe we've spent some time trying to find it. Oh, I can't find it. I can't find it, or I can't read my handwriting. Um, then we're going to spend more time resetting that password, and then we have to think of a new password. So I'm a huge advocate of standalone password managers. These are companies that are in business for one thing, and that is to protect and secure our passwords. Using a password manager, say that comes built in with your web browser, not the most secure. Using a password manager that comes on your phone for free, not the most secure. And I know the last thing that people want to hear about is, oh my gosh, I don't want another digital subscription. I am so tired of another digital subscription. But a really solid standalone password manager I think costs $1 to $2 a month. So we're not talking, $25, $30 a month. We're talking um, a price point that is hopefully manageable for your audience. But these companies have been around for over a decade. They're using the latest and greatest encryption technologies, and they keep your password secure. And if you happen to share your Netflix password with other members of your household, you can share that password in an encrypted way rather than texting someone the passcode. Please don't do that. Um, and so there's other perks, let's say, of using a password manager, including using the password manager to come up with what I use the nerdy term, the gobbledygook of a password. Um, so I'm recommending to clients these days to use a password that's at least 20 characters long, and
Wow.
that makes people's heads spin. They're
Yeah.
like, I can't come up with another phrase, Kate, that's 20 characters long. Well, then have your password manager come up with it.
Yeah.
This way, you only legitimately have to remember one password, and that is the password to your password manager. And so yeah, I'll work with people, meet them where they are, talk through what is a good solution for them. Because my parents who are in their 80s, I'm not going to teach them or set them up on a password manager. It's going to be one of the first things that they unlearn as they age even further. So it's really important just to meet clients, in my opinion, where they are, what's going to be doable, and come up with a system. That's important because this concept of a digital legacy, like if I get hit by the ice cream truck later today, as my dad would say, I'm leaving a digital legacy. The average American now has 240 online accounts, Kathy. So that means my executor is going to have to dispose of those 240 online accounts because most of them are connected to a credit card. And so, or I should say, potentially connected to a credit card. And so they're going to have to know all of those digital accounts. And not to be morbid, but an inventory of my digital accounts is not included in my will, like my physical property is. So I'm trying to kind of normalize that conversation and support people to prepare for their digital legacy while also securing their digital life known as their passwords.
This is work that I do with clients and have done in the past, or I call it kind of digital afterlife planning. And the idea, and not even afterlife, sometimes you're just incapacitated, and it's like, okay, so how does that mortgage get paid? Do you know? Or what's going to come out of that bank account every month automatically that the Social Security goes to, but you passed away, so now there's no more Social Security coming in, and those accounts are going to bounce? Like, what are all of those ways that we are connected digitally and
Yes.
financially, or our photos, the things, our assets, things that are important to us, and knowing just how that collection grows every single day. And we've already talked about the risk of, what happens if other people get their hands on some of those assets, but more importantly, uh, you may never get scammed, but you're definitely going to die, right?
Well,
That's one thing we can be sure of. So what is out there and what is vulnerable and what does somebody need to know about in order to execute on your behalf for financial prudency and risk management and making sure things that need to get shut down or things that need to get paid happen?
right. Well, there was just an article yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, um, titled, it was about a woman. Her husband passed away unexpectedly, and she spent over a year unwrangling or figuring out what the finances were because there was very little paper trail. A year on just top of, wow, she lost her husband. Like where does she get to grieve?
Yeah.
When does she get to miss him? And I mean, I can't even imagine what that woman went through. Spending a year trying to figure out the money because there was she was not left any instructions or guidance.
Listen, between the digital afterlife and digital estate planning and the digital scam protections, it's really easy for somebody to just say, rip that computer out of my house, get rid of this phone. I don't want anything to do with any of that. And unfortunately, we don't really live in that world right now. And if anything, we're going the other opposite direction, right? We're talking,
Right.
especially getting back to talking about our seniors, right? Gee, how do we have some apps that help them order their
Mhm.
groceries or telehealth
That's
with
right.
their doctor? Like we're only trying to help bring technology in to help their lives get better, not worse. But it is making everyone that much more vulnerable.
Well, it is. And just, 2 Fridays ago, when I was at this independent living community, there was a gentleman sitting next to me. I think he would be okay if I used his first name. His first name is Jim. And we were talking about, tech, and he said to everyone, and which everyone head nodded, he's like, Kate, he's like, we're in our 80s. We have to use tech. We could not live without tech. He said, now, do I like that? That's a different story. He said, but I use it to get the groceries delivered or to have a takeout meal, delivered to pay bills, et cetera, et cetera. So this is not going to go away. Um, so taking a collaborative community team approach, whatever your community is, maybe your community is your family, maybe your team is, your two besties, and maybe someone of a different generation. But just taking control of determining, okay, who is going to be my trusted team? Who's on team Kate? Who's on team Kathy? And having those more curious conversations, um, but also just leading, with empathy too when it comes to our parents. Hey, this was a scam that I almost fell for myself, right? So it's not about how smart we are, it's about how real these scams
Yeah.
seem, right? Or take a more teamwork approach. Hey, why don't we both check our accounts together and set up alerts or multi-factor authentication? So there's a variety of different ways that we can approach having those collaborative conversations.
And I do think nothing is more important or powerful than a cautionary tale, right? So the idea of even if you've been scammed and even if it is horrifying and embarrassing and shameful, telling other people that you need to watch out because this stuff is
Right.
going on. Say like, I don't want to talk about how much money this was or what happened, but here's what you should know happened, and here's why I believe I fell for it, and this is what I want you to know about. I feel like if people were able to do that, you're
Yes.
much more likely to listen to your peer who looks and sounds just like you
Yes.
than maybe like, oh, well, I read about an ARP, so I guess I'm going to follow it.
Right. And you're absolutely right, Kathy, and I think that's a beautiful way to approach it. You don't have to divulge, what your financial loss was, but you could just say, "Hey, this happened to me. Here's what I fell for, and most importantly, I don't want this to happen to you."
So important. And again, hey, this is about us as caregivers, but honestly, with 73% of adults falling for scams, it's us too. And it's our grown children who are at college and also vulnerable. And it's this is really, I think, a tell your friends, share this episode kind of moment to help kind of create some dialogue, I hope.
Yes, like have the open conversations and then in hopes of not becoming a fraud investigator.
No, no, let's never be that. But I want to now turn into of the Quicksand 3 because there is a question about careers in that, which you already know. So, the Quicksand 3 is the questions that I ask all of my guests, kind of along the lines of the different principles of surfing the quicksand and helping midlife women get unstuck. So, I want to ask them to you. And we'll start with that first one, which is if money and skills and time and history and geography were not an issue, what is a career you might like to have tried? And let's make sure it isn't fraud investigator.
I was originally going to answer this question with like, I would love to be a high school math teacher. That was my fallback plan if I was going to fail out of engineering because I didn't have a lot of self-confidence back in the 90s. Obviously, I did not fail out of engineering, but actually, I had an opportunity to teach AP Calculus about 3.5 years ago for one semester. So I've already done that. But I'll tell you, I love working and supporting seniors when I do these pro bono tech talks. So if I didn't have to worry about money, I would just do pro bono tech talks and help these seniors stay informed on tech and how to use it in ways that can they can benefit from, including what are the accessibility options on our phones.
Oh, I love that. And you have such a way about you that I'm sure when they see you coming, they're so thrilled. And you're a good teacher. And I've been in your classes, so I know you're a good teacher. The second question is, what's a tip or a technique that you use to get yourself unstuck and do something you've been avoiding?
You're gonna laugh, and that's okay. Um, I like do a dance party. I will just put on like one of my favorite Taylor Swift songs and just dance it out. And then I just give myself that little pep talk and I'm like, you know what? I gotta put on my big girl pants and I need to adult and I need to do this. But yeah, just the 2, 3 minutes just to kind of shake it out of my system. That's what I do.
I love it. We need to somehow manifest Taylor to do a song that's really focused on productivity. I love that. How do we make that happen?
Well, she's already done one on the oldest daughter, which I very much can relate to.
Yes, 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 same. But that's not a dance party. That one's not a dance party.
Right.
And then last question, what is a way that when life gets chaotic, you recharge or hit the reset button?
Well, my husband and I just did this last night. We did a fire pit out back. And we just have the best talks. I mean, we only got married about 3 years ago, but we have the best talks around a fire pit. The phones are left inside. He's got his bourbon. I last night I was having my buzzless bee, and yeah, we just have the best time. We just, kind of forget about the world for a little while.
That is great. And I know you're in Colorado. So I'm in Massachusetts and we had a friend over last night and I convinced my husband. He said, "Oh, let's do a fire pit outside." I'm like, "It is way too windy and cold. I'm not up for that." But we could have the first fireplace fire of the year. So we did that. And so it was cold enough to really justify that we could be entering fireplace season. And it was the same thing. It was just a lovely night.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it.
I want to wrap up by kind of talking a little bit. I just said you're in Colorado, but I do know that you work virtually on so many different things. Can you do a little bit of a rundown on what those virtual services are and then how somebody might reach out to you to learn more about working with you?
Oh, that is so sweet of you to ask, Kathy. So, my virtual services, I touched on the password organizing services before. Sometimes that's just coaching someone to come up with an authoritative list of their passwords, and then I get that data imported into a password manager and give them some training on how to use it. Other times it's like, hey, you know what? I don't want my passwords in my browser anymore, and we'll move that data to a new solution. I also help people with legacy organizing. This is really the heart and soul of what is behind the Digital Wrangler. So that's helping people organize not just their passwords, but all of their important life details. What online accounts are they using for their medical information? Where are their legal documents? Um, what streaming services and digital subscriptions do they have? Our loved one's going to be able to access their email and their photos. And let's not forget the all important cell phone bill. Because, like we talked about earlier with the two-factor authentication code, when we do pass away, our loved ones are going to need to be able to pay that cell phone bill, potentially for a few months, if not longer, after we pass, because they need to receive those text messages. So when I support people with legacy organizing, my signature offering is my 10-week program. That is a live cohort, no more than 5 people in each um, group, and we tackle one theme a week. Other people just prefer to take a digital course or buy my digital download. And then on the other end of the spectrum, people are like, you know what, Kate, I don't want anyone to know anything about me and I want to work with you one-on-one. So again, I meet people where they are and make my offerings as accessible to everyone around the country.
I love your 10-week program and the idea that it's really number one, you're working on one topic a week, right? Because it can be so overwhelming. And number two, you're working with little cohorts so they can kind of work together. Wait, what did you learn? Or how are you doing it? Keeping each other accountable. I think both of those are great. It's very much like my Clever Girl Organizing Challenge, which I kick off every January. And
Right.
it's like we're doing 11 weeks. We got a different topic every week. We got a Facebook
Mhm.
community group. We're supporting each other. We're going to teach each other and help us learn, but we're going to tackle it. And we can do that in just 2.5 or 3 months.
That's absolutely right. This I've got a cohort now, 4 people. California, Virginia, and Connecticut are the states that are represented, and it's just so cool. Like they have become friends. They cheer each other on, and it's so much fun. We've got that cohort has what, 2 more weeks left, and everyone will bring their favorite beverage to the end at the last one, and we'll toast and cheers and do all of those fun things.
If somebody wanted to join that, what would you say they need to know about themselves in terms of like technical savviness or availability and how much time they'd have to give to the work?
Okay, so there's a whole lot there to unpack. So, I describe it like I know that I need to work out, but I cannot work out on my own. So if that is something that resonates with you, if you feel you need to have a weekly appointment with your trainer, just translate that to, okay, I'm going to have a weekly date with Kate and the group for 10 weeks, and we're going to tackle everything. So we meet for 1 hour for 10 weeks, depending on the complexity of your uniqueness for the topic. You may only need 30 minutes outside of that 1 hour, or I just learned last week we just had a record breaking session where a couple shared that they estimate because they didn't fully do the homework, which is okay. They estimate that they probably have anywhere from 50 to 70 monthly subscriptions. So for in that instance, they're going to be spending a little bit more time in between sessions. So it really kind of depends on the uniqueness of your life. But if like me, you need a date with a trainer to work out, the 10-week program is probably a good fit for you. If you're highly motivated and you don't need a lot of structure and you're a master DIYer, then maybe my digital course or digital download is best suited for you.
That makes
Um,
sense. Yeah. I,
yeah, so you can go to my website, the www.thedigitalwrangler.com, and Wrangler is spelled with the W. Think Colorado and cowboys. Um, and you'll find, I think I actually just posted, even though I haven't shared it with anyone, the first round of cohort dates for 2026 have been published. And there's a digital download, and you can just send me an email as well, kate@thedigitalwrangler.com.
that's great. And
Happy to answer any
I'll
questions.
make sure all that is in the show notes too. Kate, thank you so much. This was such a rich conversation. And like you said, we could probably spend another several hours talking about lots of these. My goal is to hope that people listening heard about some things, maybe heard about things they for the first time and it's clued them in a little bit, but more importantly, heard about the importance of building a communication collaborative relationship within the family if they can to try and help support themselves and support their parents and their kids as they're trying to protect their digital information and their dignity.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again, Kathy. This has been delightful. As always, it's so great to chat with you.
Thank you. I'm so lucky that I had Kate in my life already when I was starting this podcast and thinking that I wanted to talk about digital scams. She instantly came to mind to me as somebody who I knew would have a rich and abundant conversation that helps us think about ourselves, think about our parents, thinking about our community and our loved ones, and how we can help protect ourselves from this kind of trend that's only getting worse in society. I if if you enjoyed listening to Kate, and I know enjoy is a hard word, right? But if you got value out of listening to Kate talk about the seriousness of all of this, but also the things that you can do to help protect yourself, help organize your digital life, I hope you'll head over to thedigitalwrangler.com and learn more about her cohorts coming up, but also she has a free download over there on estate and digital life planning. It's free, and when you sign up for it, you also get tapped into her newsletter. Honestly, I get her newsletter. It's every other week. It's one of those newsletters I always open because there's always value in it. So if this is on your mind, even if you're not ready to do something today, but you just want to be more aware, I'd love for you to tap into Kate and her expertise because I think she has some great stuff for you. If you have people in your life who you think you need to have a richer conversation with about the communication when it comes to being protected around digital scams, I hope this episode inspired you to think about how to approach it in a new way or how to prioritize that uncomfortable conversation. It doesn't mean that raising it to our parents or to our loved ones is telling them that we don't trust them. I think about it when we were young and our parents were teaching us to drive, and they said, it's not that I don't trust you, it's everyone else I don't trust. It's that same conversation, right? I inspire you, or I hope you're inspired to go have that conversation. Say, Mom, Dad, it's not you I don't trust, it's everybody else I don't trust. So what can we do together to help protect ourselves, help put some guardrails in place, and make sure that if something does go wrong, you're picking up at the phone and you're calling me so that we can figure out how to get to the bottom of it as quickly as possible. Thanks for staying with me on this one. If you've got thoughts about it, head on over to quicksandpod.com and share any information in the contact form with me about this episode or anyone else that you want to hear about. Thanks so much.